consider this the next time somebody tells you there can't be any big conspiracies, because how could they get that many people to be in on it and lie about it? Obviously, it happens all the time.
Listen to this, folks.
To my right, this was previously was a soybean field, and this little new cut road divided this field, and the right side of the road was filled with which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. Same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I was sitting there going over my notes, and a van pulled alongside of me that turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time he said there was 125,000 there. And they were stacked, he told me 15 high. I asked him who owned them, and he stated that the CDC owned them and that they were leasing the land, leasing his land for storage. And he said his brother worked with the CDC in Atlanta and had been asked by the CDC to do a 3-year extension to place temporary morgues all across the nation.
We're just getting an idea for the size of these boxes. What could these boxes be used for? Well, they're called casket liners. And that's an interesting term, isn't it? It's a casket liner. When I first heard the term casket liner, I thought perhaps a lining for a casket. But this is too big to be on the inside of a casket. So certainly this could be used as a casket. This is an inexpensive casket. And you can see the size here. There's lots of room. I think my friends here, we could all probably get inside, and it might be a little cozy, but we'd fit just fine.
You know, there's certain people that are not fit for the new system, the new evolution. They were sort of helping humanity evolve by the elimination of those that weren't ready for the new age, the new world. Hitler believed in the fifth root race of Blavatsky, but yet I think this new system is going to have a very unique version of evolution. And then, of course, the appearance of aliens really validates that on a worldwide scale. No longer do you have to, have this sort of underground preaching of theosophy as it was in Hitler's time, but rather the whole world is united in this understanding, or perceived understanding, of potential evolution coming. After all, the aliens are here. We can be like them. They just simply evolved like we have the potential to do. We can become like them. We can communicate telepathically or whatever, as long as we are willing to take that next step. And there's this great precipice that we're now at this ability to move to this next level, but it's all going to be in the context of God has just recently been disproven, but yet there will be people on earth that can't quite go with the new system because they're stuck in the old paradigm of God does exist and the Bible was accurate and these aliens are a deception. Those people will be presented as enemy number one and will be viewed as the thing that's holding us back from the potential evolution.
As of July of 2008, there are over 1 million Americans on the watch list. 20,000 names get added each month.
1 million entries. Now, there can't possibly be 1 million terrorists in the United States. We know, for example, there are lots of famous people on that list, don't belong in there. Senator Edward Kennedy, Nelson Mandela, peace activists, nuns, lots of people on the list.
David Antoon, highly decorated Vietnam War veteran, served his country bravely, criticized the Iraq War.
I mean, you can take WMDs and the Gulf of Tonkin, and you could see the manipulation of information to bring the American public into accepting and approving of a war that really had no basis. So I started writing about that. It wasn't long thereafter I noticed that every time I would purchase a ticket and board a flight, I would receive boarding passes with 4 S's on them. Every time I travel, every time my children travel, every time my wife travels. Every time my 86-year-old mother travels. They're all on the watch list. So, you know, it's an inconvenience, but it's insulting.
What's up with this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And finally, this nice young TSA agent said, "Oh, you're on the list." And I'm like, "The list? I'm on the list?" How was Nazi Germany able to round up so many Jews so quickly? Because they had mechanized the list. Again, how did Pinochet manage to round up mass arrests? Mass arrests are always a hallmark of a closing society. Thousands, tens of thousands of people in a notorious soccer stadium. The list. Every closing society keeps a list.
The Freemason and One World Government advocate Zbigniew Brzezinski said the following in his work Between Two Ages, quote, "The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen."
The same New Agers who called for peace, love, harmony, and world unity, when confronted with separatists, for example, fundamentalist Christians, you start to see a darker side to them. They do not appreciate people who will not adopt their New Age views. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the influential New Age guru sought out by the Beatles, stated, quote, "There has not been and there will not be a place for the unfit. The fit will lead, and if the unfit are not coming along, there is no place for them. In the place where light dominates, there is no place for darkness." See, in his thinking, the fit are the New Agers, and the unfit are those who do not adopt the New Age beliefs. People who are, for example, fundamentalist Christians, Jews, people like this. So essentially, you see a lot of intolerance within the New Age movement. It's not all nice and dandy with these people. You know, they have the mask, they have the appearance of peace, love, harmony, but in their writings, they do come out and say that there is no place for Christians and people who do not accept their beliefs.
Alice Bailey explained what the New World Order will do to those who refuse to accept it, quote, "Let us never forget that it is the life, its purpose, and its directed, intentional destiny that is of importance, and also that when a form proves inadequate, or too diseased, or too crippled for the expression of that purpose, it is, from the point of view of the hierarchy, no disaster when that form has to go. Death is not a disaster to be feared. The work of the destroyer is not really cruel or undesirable. Therefore, there is much destruction permitted by the custodians of the plan, and much evil turned into good," unquote.
They call their policy accommodation. They say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation,
Republics are hard to keep. We've lost ours, folks. We are not a republic anymore. We have degenerated to a democracy, and the next step is totalitarianism. We're that close to becoming a totally socialistic and then communistic country in America. You watch, it's going to happen real soon.
prisons are being built, internment camps constructed, and laws passed that deal severely with anyone who dares to step out of line or ask too many questions. There are approximately over 600 prison camps in the U.S., all fully operational and ready to receive prisoners. They are all staffed and even surrounded by full-time guards, but they are all empty. These camps are to be operated by FEMA should martial law need to be implemented in the United States. The camps all have railroad facilities.
We found that these state facilities are being built in the middle of U.S. Army property. We also began to receive information about the Federal Emergency Management Agency known as FEMA, such as these pictures of a FEMA facility in Texas. FEMA operations are divided into 10 regions, as we were told in this letter from FEMA. American citizens have... The FEMA plans to imprison American citizens have generated a lot of interest around the country in locating the potential prison camps throughout the country. These may be facilities currently being used as prisons, such as those you saw earlier, or prisons that are being built supposedly in the name of the war on drugs, or facilities that have other uses but which could be quickly used to detain large numbers of people, such as this Amtrak facility in Beech Grove, Indiana. We're standing now in the main parking lot, which doesn't look too sinister. At this level, it is a very large parking lot, fenced on all sides by fence topped by barbed wire. It also has these electronically operated turnstiles. There is also a surveillance camera, just like we saw at the FEMA facility, pointing out to the parking lot, and a helicopter windsock. All of these apparent security measures are particularly unusual here, because this is a very low crime area, and this facility is nothing but an old train repair station with nothing in it worth stealing. In this portion of the parking lot is a brick building, suitable for processing, next to a gate that leads right out to the railroad tracks, and all of this is contained inside a fully fenced area, now 3 layers deep in fencing at this point. Facing the opposite direction, you can see that this area, too, is a very large fenced area with railroad track running the length of the fence and plenty of warehouses. This facility was supposed to have closed in June of 1993, yet instead several $1 million in federal funds have been spent on supposed renovations over the past 2 years. Helicopter windsocks and markers are evident throughout the property. This small building is the only way into a particular fenced area. Inside this building, we see more of the motion-activated detectors, electronic turnstiles, and prison bars. All of the renovations to this property have involved putting in new fencing, electronic turnstiles, concrete flooring in unused warehouse buildings, and putting in large gas furnaces on buildings that were never heated any time in the past 20 years. Outside this building is fencing and a cattle run section of fence, all topped by barbed wire, pointing inward, not to keep people out, but to keep people in. This was common throughout the facility, particularly the new fencing that had been erected. Here's a helicopter marker on the power lines outside the facility, indicating expected helicopter traffic, and again, another tall radio antenna. Looking around, you can get an idea of how huge this place is and how many people it could contain in its fenced-in area. In yet another fenced area, we see a large warehouse building at the end, with the electronic turnstiles in front of it. The building is one that has a new concrete floor, and its doors and windows have all been blocked. Outside there are new gas pipes. And come out at some very, very large brand new furnaces that have been installed at the buildings throughout the facility. Inside the facility, we found large fenced-in areas next to the railroad tracks marked green zone and blue zone, suitable for holding a lot of people. Many of the old warehouse buildings have had new concrete floors put into them. Unused sections of railroad track have been dug up and replaced, and from the supplies in the stockyards, it is obvious they will be doing even more construction and fencing. Senator Lugar of Indiana recently obtained more federal funding to renovate this facility, which is supposedly only for the repair of broken trains and where most of the buildings on the property haven't been used for years. It certainly appears they are expecting more than just broken trains.
A security ring doesn't take much. It can be a sports arena. It can be abandoned airports. It could be abandoned military facilities. Any place that you could set up a security perimeter could be used as a temporary internment camp.
Several years ago, the military issued a challenge to create a faster and better razor tape. They wanted a barrier that would be at least 50 inches taller than the standard fence and one that could be deployed faster than 30 man-hours.
Ulster County-based Cobra Systems is getting ready to ship the first batch of its express razor wire to the U.S. military.
Shown here is a FEMA facility in Denton, Texas, where you can see mile after mile of FEMA command and control trailers. These trailers are self-sustaining and contain electrical generators and communications equipment that can be moved out anywhere in the country to start a FEMA operations center.
It's a $37 million facility. It was built in Indiana. It was modeled off of a modern facility in Michigan. It originally was designed in the States and brought down here in sections, so we put it together like one big Lego piece.
Military Occupational Specialty Internment Resettlement Specialist. This MOS plays an integral role in providing a uniform system of handling prisoners and detainees. First and always, these MPs are combat support soldiers trained to fight, then also trained as internment resettlement specialists to control and supervise detainees, to ensure their humane treatment, and to assist them in returning to a productive life. For this job, the Army will train you to use specialized equipment to monitor activity, to conduct searches, and to inspect areas where prisoners work and live. Here, you'll train to in-process prisoners and detainees, and to brief them on their rights. In addition, you'll train to inventory and secure their property, take photographs and fingerprints, issue personal items, and assign cells. You'll train to conduct prisoner formations and roll calls, to monitor their exercise, recreation, and work areas, to prepare and maintain records, and develop written reports. After your initial entry training and advanced individual training, you'll work long hours, day or night, in a garrison or field environment, where you may practice emergency procedures, detect and confiscate contraband, and escort prisoners outside the facility.
I wanted to debunk these FEMA camps. I'm tired of hearing. You know about them? Sure. I'm tired of hearing. I wanted to debunk them. Well, we've now for several days done research on them. A massive influx of illegal immigrants that we would have to jail. Now they're sitting there empty. If you got a problem in California, why aren't we using those? But why are we using those?
That's FEMA, federal emergency. What's that have to do with immigration? That's an I word.
It's an odd thing. It has nothing to do with that.
Now, this one I asked the FEMA people, the sober ones there, if they really had this documented. Because we talked about this Rex 84 2 or 3 years ago, and the Spotlight had mentioned it, but it wasn't really proven. And they assured me, they said, yes, they have this one from top attorneys within FEMA who have admitted to it, and they got it documented.
Training operations taking place all over the country with the pretense of training for overseas combat, but it has become clear to investigators and Americans alike, they are training for martial law.
First up, it's all eyes on the sky. Live pictures now from Phoenix. For the second night in a row, military training exercises are underway around the valley. And within the last half hour, the Phoenix Police Department has confirmed to 3TV that they are supporting Department of Defense training around the city.
As you take a look at some of the buildings downtown, what witnesses here are saying is that they were actually flying amongst the buildings, and now we know why. In fact, Phoenix PD confirming for us that the Department of Defense is conducting training exercises, trying to get military personnel certified in urban operations.
Urban operations. And you were looking at footage of a massive martial law type military drill in Florida. This took place in downtown Fort Lauderdale. You can see the scale of this. Choppers everywhere. They're rounding people up in the streets. Downtown Miami saw the same thing. Not this big a scale, just a few choppers. Never marching people around in the street like this.
It was believed that FEMA was put in place to help victims of natural disasters. But Hurricanes Katrina and Harvey were examples that proved this couldn't be further from the truth.
Police, open the door! They had AR-15s or M16s. They were pointing at us.
They told us, put your hands up in the air. Let us see your hands.
They're drawing down on me? And they let the looters run rampant for over a week? Are you kidding me?
I really thought they were going to kill me. I really did.
They didn't care what your rights were. They were going to deny them.
You're letting the thugs get away with everything, and you're coming to honest, good citizens and taking away their protection, and it is wrong. Wrong. Wrong.
But still, the order had been given for police and National Guard to go house to house, often with guns drawn, to evacuate residents and confiscate their firearms.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
It was a human drama with emotions and tensions running high.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, anyone home?
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house. For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. Yeah, you never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do if somebody pops around the corner.
I mean, shoot an American.
Yeah.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move.
Japanese Americans were given a week to evacuate their homes and report to an assembly center. They were allowed to bring only the baggage they could carry. Many sold valuable personal possessions for pennies on the dollar. More than 100,000 people eventually relocated to the camps. About 2/3 were American citizens. Living conditions in the camps were difficult and sometimes harsh. Many residents lived in large barracks. Meals were served in mess halls, and the camps were ringed by barbed wire and armed guards. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the legality of the internment camps, and the policy remained in place for nearly 3 years.
The American public has been led to believe that FEMA is for disaster relief operations. Yet if we look at military manuals such as FM 4130, the U.S. Army Civil Affairs and Operations Manual, you'll find the details about who FEMA really is. The government doesn't want this information out because, as you can see, the manual says to destroy it by any means that will prevent its dissemination. The manual says that FEMA is the executive agency that serves as the point of contact for the USG for emergency management within the United States. Under Executive Order 12148 of July 20th, 1979, the President transferred all functions from the Civil Defense, Civil Preparedness FEMA the authority to implement FEMA plans during a national emergency. Most people don't realize that this country has been in a declared state of emergency since the Federal Emergency Act was enacted in 1933, which was the beginning of FEMA, and also gave presidents the authority to issue executive orders. Each president since then has issued an executive order declaring a state of national emergency. Bill Clinton has issued 3 such orders since he took office. Several military manuals, such as these manuals, ranging from 1985 through 1994, speak of FEMA as the implementing agency for Operation Garden Plot, the plan to put American citizens in prison camps under military control. This 1994 Field Manual for Military Police speaks of Operation Garden Plot as a DoD civil disturbance plan that tells the military what they can and cannot do, and that they will operate under FEMA control. Welcome to the New World Order. Expect no mercy.